I found a gift from my mother in a garbage bag between a peel and a beer can. I didn't say a word. Just texted her. There was an envelope inside. Next morning she was calling nonstop. If you've ever stood at someone's door with a bouquet in your hand and thought, maybe I shouldn't even be here. Congratulations, you and I have a shared experience. Mother's Day morning, 8:40. I'm in a green dress with gifts in a bag and a hope in my pocket that already smells of naivete. When my mother sent me a text last week, something like thanks for the tax help, I felt something silly and unkillable stirring inside. It's a colon and a parenthesis. Holy crap, she put a smiley face. For the first time in the last 10 years? Well, that's got to count for something, right? On the way out, I stopped to pick up her old favorite perfume. The one she used to wear when she used to stroke my hair at bedtime. Lilacs are flowers, not a metaphor. And a letter. With a pen. A red envelope. Inside, no apologies, no recriminations. Just gratitude. And like an idiot, I lovingly signed it. Yours no matter what. When the door was opened by Zach, the younger brother, the always a student, always right type, he didn't even take the brush out of his mouth. Oh, Charity's here, he said and turned around. No hello or come in. The atmosphere was an A. John, the stepfather, stood in the kitchen cutting avocados with the look of a surgeon saving a brokerage account. Well, you're here. It sounded like, well, you again. Mother flashed down the hall, tossed, hi honey, and immediately turned back to serving. She always turned not to me at all but away from me. As if I wasn't a daughter, but an awkward shadow from a past life. I put the perfume on the tabletop, set the flowers down, took out the letter. As we went to breakfast, it lay next to her plate like a forgotten napkin. It was cozy at the table, if cozy was a mixture of cold salmon, creaking forks, and John's endless smugness. He was recounting how he'd made another deal with someone in Miami. Zach would add jokes of the "are you still freelancing?" level, and his mother, as usual, would remain silent. She'd long since become an expert at tacit approval. You know, it's a form of parenting to not intervene when humiliation is at hand. I tried to say something about the new project. John chuckled. Oh, so you didn't stick around again? Zach grinned stupidly. And I, as always, gulped and smiled. Standard scenario. You bring wine, they pour you vinegar. No one opened the gift. The flowers were not carried into the water. The letter was left lying around like a prop. After the meal, I went to throw away the napkins. There was a garbage bag in the garage. Not a trash can, a clear bag. And, you know, there are those moments when you kind of know what you're going for, but you look anyway. There were my flowers. A box of perfume. An envelope. Unopened. It was lying there like evidence of a crime. Everything I brought was taken out like garbage. No hysterics. No drama. Just thrown out. I took it all back out. Stacked it neatly. Walked out the side door. Not a word. No goodbye. No yelling. At home, I set the package on the table and stared at it. For 20 minutes. Not a single tear. Just an internal thump that doesn't make a noise. It's blunt. It's slow. Says enough is enough. I opened the letter. Where I had written, you were always my strength. It seemed like someone was quietly whispering, you were stupid. I wasn't angry. I just felt something I'd held tooth and nail all my life disappearing. My mother never said, you're no longer a part of us. She just made it so I had to realize it on my own. And now I do. Clearly. I'm not a part. I am a convenient wallet, an emotional ATM, and a person who can be untouched without loss. And now I knew there would be a loss. I remembered how, in 5th grade, she came to assembly one day, all in white, with a smile and a belated coffee in her hand. The class teacher said I was the quiet, reliable one who didn't need attention. My mother laughed and said, yeah, that's definitely not me. Seemed like a joke at the time. Now it's a formula. Comfortable means inconspicuous. The morning after everything, I found an old postcard from her in the mail, dated 2007. It said, you are my joy. I will always be there for you. I read it like a stranger, like a clipping from an old newspaper where a typo is not a mistake, but the truth. The kitchen still smelled of lilacs. The smell that as a child meant mommy's home. Now it was an alarm. Ironic. I was trying to remind her of herself through a scent that used to be about her. I looked out the window and thought, How many times have I knocked where the door was long ago boarded up? How many times I had paid to enter when I wasn't even asked to come in? Those flowers stood in my room now, maimed but alive. At one point I noticed one of the buds starting to bloom, just from the water. And so did I. It's interesting how quickly memory can jump around. One morning you believe a smiley face. The next morning you believe you're no longer in their scenario. It's like they cut you out without the blood. But the pain remains. When you come for so many years at the call of memory, and not by invitation, sooner or later memory becomes the enemy. I didn't just believe in chance. I paid for it. With gifts, with calls, with investments in the future of people who don't care about my past. Sometimes I wonder what our family would look like if I had been born after Zach. Maybe then I'd have a seat at a real table too, instead of a side table serving flavorless gratitude. Maybe I would have been invited instead of tolerated. None of this is about revenge. It's not about tears. It's about balance. If you've invested your whole life in a relationship that's only producing losses, it's time to write it off as an ineffective asset. I'm not a bank. I'm a human being. They expected me to swallow. I'm used to it. I've swallowed many times. When they forgot my picture on a family card. When a gift was called unnecessary. When silence became a way of communicating. But now I don't. And the weird thing is, it doesn't hurt. It's flat. It's like turning off the heat inside a house you no longer live in. I drove to work with that bag afterward. I left it in the car. At lunchtime I looked at it and suddenly I laughed. Not loudly but with my throat. As if I'd realized an old joke I'd never heard before. Because they wanted me to be their backup wallet again. And I didn't want to be anyone's convenient option anymore. On the way home I stopped by the old school. Sat on the bench where we used to eat pies. The wind was cool but not prickly. I closed my eyes and suddenly realized that silence is not loneliness. It's freedom from other people's rules of the game. Then I pulled out my cell phone. Not for a call. I just looked at the last messages from my mother. And I deleted them. Not in anger. Just like removing an old box from the pantry that hasn't had anything useful in it for a long time. I didn't leave in anger. I just stopped coming. To be honest, I thought that after that scene in the garage there would be relief. You know, like in the movies, everything poured out, you realized everything, you let go, you're on the path of spiritual growth. Yeah, sure. The only thing I felt was the phone starting to vibrate at 7:12 a.m. 3 rings. Then 6. Then 18. Not from emergency services, mind you. It's just that my favorite family decided an envelope of money was a good reason to make a fuss. What envelope? Oh yeah, I wrote to them. It looks like there was an envelope in the letter. I put Zach's tuition money in it. It must have gotten lost. And that was it. No scandal. No screaming. It was just a throw-in. And I wasn't even lying. Well, almost. There really was an envelope. It was red. It just didn't have any money in it. Just my love, which we know they took out with the rest of the garbage. My mother called first. Then John. Then my mother again, but from a different number. Even Zach tried to write something. And in his classic, hey, if this is some kind of test, well, it's not good style. I smiled. Apparently, financial disappearance was more convincing than any tears. While they spun in a vortex of panic, I sat at the table with my coffee, and for the first time in a long time I felt not angry, not resentment, but silence. Pure scrubbed silence. Without their phrases, without the teasing, without the "you're misunderstanding." And then I opened my laptop and went to cut my ties with John. Easy. Exactly. Like a surgeon, but without the anesthesia. I found everyone I'd ever helped connect him to, suppliers, partners, investors, the very people who worked with him because they knew me. And I wrote each of them a short, polite letter. I am no longer associated with John. Please do not associate my name with his projects. No revenge. Just honesty. They should know who they trust. The first to respond was Martin from Seattle. Thanks for the warning. It explains a lot. Then came a reply from Frankfurt. One from someone who used to call me the strategic soul of their deal. We're pulling out of the negotiations. It was just like a note. On the third day I got a call from John. Once. No voicemail. I think he was hoping I'd call back. Naive. If you spend half your life ignoring someone, you can't expect urgent answers. The mother wrote an essay in Messenger. Something along the lines of, It's all just a mistake. I didn't throw away the gift. Maybe someone else did. I mean, it could have been a neighbor, or we could have accidentally. Nice try. Except I personally pulled the letter out of the trash, where it lay peacefully against a backdrop of coffee grounds and last year's IKEA magazine. Zach. He took the short route as usual. You're being dramatic. I mean, we've always joked like that. It's just perfume and flowers. What are you, like a child? Yeah. Only this kid had paid for his prom suit, paid for his SAT courses, gave him an old laptop because mom said you couldn't afford it. I didn't respond to anyone. And that's when the real magic began. One of John's projects went belly up. The supplier backed out of the contract. The Miami partner froze negotiations. It wasn't because I was conspiring. It was because their success was built on my reputation as a rented roof. And I just moved out. And yes, people wrote to me. Some from coworkers. Some of them were just acquaintances. You did the right thing. Don't have any regrets. And I didn't. I just marveled at how quickly a house of cards collapses when you stop propping it up. On the fourth day, my mother came to my office. No warning. Walked in like a movie. I'm still the queen, I'm just in a bad mood face. She didn't say anything at first. Then she sat across from me. You're destroying everything we've built. It's humiliating our family. I looked her straight in the eye and calmly said, Do you know where I found the letter? Silence. Then the familiar. I didn't mean to. It was an accident. John may not have realized dash. I saw it in the bag. Everything I'd brought. Flowers. A gift. A letter. Where the trash is. She froze. For the first time I felt like she was speechless. She tried to say something else about regret, about let's talk. But I stood up. You didn't apologize then. You won't apologize now. We're done. And that was it. No yelling. No final scene. Just a pause. One I'm not going to fill anymore. On the fifth day, an email arrived from one of John's former clients. Thanks for letting us know. We're leaving. I forwarded it to myself. Like a medal. No ribbon. That evening of the same day, I saw Zach outside the subway. He was walking with coffee and someone on a call. Saw me. Pretended not to notice. And then he texted, I just don't understand why you're doing all this. I didn't respond, because if the person didn't understand why writing in the trash was the end, then an explanation won't help. Sometimes I wonder at what point my mom turned into that woman. Maybe it was when she told a friend that I was too sensitive, and that it made me vulnerable in life. Or maybe it was when she proudly talked about Zach at a family reunion and called me, well, she works in creative somewhere. As if creativity is a disease, not a profession. I thought back to when we used to make Thanksgiving pie together. I was a teenager, stubborn with acne and a bad mood. But she looked at me with such warmth. And then John came. And her eyes changed. It wasn't cold, it was careful. Careful. Like I was a grenade that could only be defused by silence. The whole thing with the envelope was absurd. People who hadn't noticed my birthday for 10 years were now looking in the trash for money that wasn't there. They were hysterical, as if they'd inherited nothing, even though they'd never left me anything. The funny thing is, no one asked, Are you okay? Didn't ask how I was feeling. Just, where's the money? What did you say? Why are you doing this? It wasn't a family, it was a collection of PR agents more concerned about reputation than a living person. At one point I caught myself thinking, I don't feel pain. I feel clarity. It's a rare state when everything is laid out, and even anger not hissing, but quietly basking in the corner like a tired cat. And then I wrote in my notebook, if I was half a family to them, now I'm nothing. And for the first time I liked the sound of it. That night I sat on the balcony, covered in plaid like an old aunt from the movies. Tea in one hand and a list of everyone I no longer owed anything to. There were 10 names on it. Including her. Mother. I crossed them off one by one. Not with anger, not with pathos. I just crossed them off. Like debts that would never be paid again. And you know, it was the best bookkeeping I've ever done. A week after the office scene, everything seemed to settle down. The phone stopped beeping, the letters from my mother never came. John vanished like his investment. I thought it was the end of the line. Turns out it was just a warm-up for an endurance race. It started with a phrase I heard from a colleague. Did you hear that John lost his contract with the Germans? Said mundanely, as if it was about the weather. I nodded and pretended it was the first time I'd heard it. Inside there was no gloating. More like curiosity. How far things would go if we just did nothing. The answer is far. A couple days later, an email arrived from another client I once introduced them to. Verbatim. We don't want to cross paths with Barnes anymore. Thanks for the heads up. I thanked and added a note. Delete all his contacts from CRM. No trace. They really thought my role was decorative. You know, like in the commercials. Pretty but useless. Wrong. I was the spacer between their business charisma and reality. And when I removed it, the friction began. But it culminated on the third Monday. I arrived at the office, had coffee, and at exactly 10:02 a.m., my mother appeared in the doorway. Not alone. John was with her. In a suit with a victim's face. Like I'd sold him on eBay with no returns. We want to talk, she said. Not hi. Not may I. Just to talk. I nodded. Led them into the meeting room. They sat down. Silence. Mother spoke first. You destroyed John's reputation. It's all because of you. You sent out the letters. You knew that without your contacts he was losing projects. I leaned back in my chair and replied, I just didn't want to be a front for his deals anymore. No more threats. No rumors. Just the truth. I'm not a part of it anymore. John pitched forward, speaking quietly with pressure. You set us up. Under the guise of silence you ran a campaign. You had an obligation to warn us. Obliged. I interjected. I was obligated? After you threw my letter in the trash? After all the years I paid to be there for you? And you didn't even pretend you needed me. The mother erupted. You're being petty. This is all about emotion. We're family. Family. I raised an eyebrow. You invite guests warmer than me. You let Zach get sarcastic to your face. You leave my gifts in the trash. And now you remember I'm someone to you. Comfortable when you need me to be. But not your own. They were silent. There was a moment, a brief one, when I saw a mother wishing she could say something real. Not defensive. Not exculpatory. But she couldn't. I stood up. This conversation is over. I'm going back to the life I'm seen in. They left. No drama. No clapping. Just disappeared like they always did. Only before, I'd been waiting for them to come back. Now I didn't. The next day, I got word that John had withdrawn from the tender. Lack of trust. The bidders refused to do business with him. The finale, as they say, without fanfare. Zach lost his scholarship. Letter from the college. Due to outstanding debt, your status is suspended. Someone forwarded it to me. I read it and closed it. No desire to get involved. It's their field. Their ball. And now it's their score. And I have other news. New position. New partners. People who called not because I'm someone's resource, but because I'm a human being. At one point I sat in the kitchen alone with the wine. I picked up the old envelope, the one from the letter. It was still in the drawer. I opened it. The paper was yellowed, the ink was a little runny. But the line was still there. You've always been my strength. I reread it. And suddenly I realized I was writing it to myself. Not her. I hadn't left my family. I just stopped knocking on a door that had long since been boarded up from the inside. And now I live in a place where I don't have to kick in the front door. Where my name doesn't start with sorry, but the silence was louder than any scandal. And honestly, it sounds beautiful. Sometimes I imagine what it looked like from the outside. A grown woman sitting in her office, calm, confident, while on the other side of the glass door, a microcosm of the microcosm that has spent decades trying to convince her that she is superfluous is crumbling. Ironic, isn't it? The quiet, invisible daughter was the trigger for their collapse. No yelling, no scenes. Just her absence. While John was losing his last deal, I remembered a scene from the past. I'm 15, I was late home because I stayed for the Olympics. Instead of good job, I heard. You're always going around your family. It hurt then. Now it makes me chuckle. Because that phrase perfectly describes their main complaint. I don't live my life according to their script. You know what the real victory is? It's not that they lost everything. It's that I don't want them to get anything back. I'm not waiting for a call, an apology, An invitation to have a human conversation. I don't hold my breath waiting for a miracle. I'm just breathing. I've made a habit of having dinner alone every Friday night. Not because there's no one else to keep me company, but because I've earned the right to be with myself. Without tension. No anxiety. Just calm. The last straw, by the way, happened suddenly. I went to the old cafe where I used to have tea with my mother. I ordered the lemon tart. And when it came, I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just ate it. Slowly. With gusto. And I realized the memories didn't sting anymore. The past wasn't gone. But it's a museum now. And I'm a visitor, not an exhibit. They were sure I'd come back. Maybe not right away. Maybe after the third ignore. But I would. I always do. Because a good daughter should be patient, understanding, flexible. A good daughter forgives. But here's the problem. I'm not a daughter anymore, I'm an adult. And I have my own rules. I have a frame on my desk now. No picture. Just a sheet with the phrase, "If you were convenient for them, become inconvenient." Silently. A reminder. Not to turn back. Not to seek a glance, not to catch praise. Not to reach out to those who held you at a distance. I don't cry over their empty seats anymore. I set the table for myself. And it's always full. The last message from Zach was short. You could have just said you were offended. I didn't even laugh. I just thought, what would have changed? They didn't believe the words. They only believed the loss of resources. So now let them believe it. I'm not worse. I just stopped being comfortable. I went out of town this weekend. No purpose. I just got in my car and drove away. I was listening to old playlists on the way. Suddenly, the same song came on that we used to dance to in the kitchen. I stopped, turned off the music and let myself not feel. I'm not trying to heal. I just stopped cutting myself with their silence. On the way back, I bought myself some perfume. Not the kind I gave my mother. My own. A new scent. A new chapter. No one else could take away my scent, throw it away or say, "Not now, honey." It's always now. And always for me. And you finished it. And maybe you recognize yourself. Then I have one question for you. Who are you still carrying a letter to that they're not going to read?